right, so what's going on with the Hearing Protection Act? We want to give you an update. Now, I got to tell you, first off, I can't believe we're even here. I can't believe we're talking about suppressors and legalizing suppressors. I remember talking 15 years ago about like, hey, what if we position this thing like it's, a hearing protection, like it's a health matter? And everybody said, yeah, that was probably a good idea. But nobody actually thought, I can't believe we're here. That's how much progress there's been in Second Amendment. So I wanted to give an update and, but, a lot of people are doing like these daily or sometimes, twice a day updates, and they're doing a fantastic job. And, we do a show once a week for 2 hours. And, so I wanted to give a little bit more, some broader information. So when you hear this, the update may have already changed because things are changing daily and sometimes a couple times a day. There are guys, Guns and Gadgets, they're doing a great job of, giving like up to date, like, hey, it passed this committee, it passed this next committee, whatever. Now, we did do some of that because we needed you to make some phone calls. And at the end of this, we're going to need you to do that as well. But I wanted to give you a little bit broader background on this that isn't as time sensitive. So what is the HPA, the Hearing Protection Act? It was actually introduced this year. The HPA was introduced in the 119th Congress, which is the current Congress, is H.R. 404 in the House by Representative Ben Cline. Now, he's out of Virginia. He's a Republican out of Virginia. And he introduced that on January 15th, 2025. It had 38 co-sponsors, which is amazing. And then there's also Senate Bill 364. That's in the Senate. And Senator Mike Crapo, I think that's how you pronounce that.
It's a dangerous name.
C-R-A-P-O. And he's out of Idaho. And he introduced that as well with 28 co-sponsors. Not unusual to have a similar or the exact same bill in both the Senate and the House. As you know, we have a bicameral system of government going back to sixth grade, which means we have two different houses. And the exact same bill has to pass both houses before it goes to the executive branch. So a lot of times they work on it at the same time. And once they get a bill that matches word for word, and everybody signs off on it on in the House, then it goes to the Senate and back and forth, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so what's the progress? Well, on May 22nd, which was just a few days ago, the House passed HR1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which included Section 2 of the HPA, which removed suppressors from the NFA. This is a very significant step forward in legislation. So they're talking more about this, and there's been some debate. Some people say, well, let's tinker with it, and some people are saying, no, let's completely get rid of this thing. There's no reason a suppressor, this piece of healthcare, that's saving people's hearing, there's no reason this should be so heavily regulated.
I think a big part of the problem here is that there's a lot of misconceptions about what a suppressor even is.
Yeah.
I think if all you've seen is a movie and you've never actually been exposed to a suppressor, you have a really skewed view as to what it is. And I think that
we're actually, we're actually going to talk about that. We're going to go over some common myths actually at the in
there's
the
a lot.
roundtable. The bill hasn't been passed by the Senate, so it's made it through the House. It was in a committee in the House, and then it passed the House, and now it's on its way to the Senate. Now, I looked this up. It actually, unfortunately, is thought of currently as having a low probability of actually passing. There's an organization called GovTrack, Govtrack, and it's giving it a 2% chance of actually passing through and eventually being enacted based on historical bill success. That, these guys are just placing bets, right? This isn't for sure, but they're basically saying, we don't know if this thing has the juice to get through the Senate. And I wanted to talk about reconciliation efforts, okay? There have been a lot of efforts to include the HPA in a reconciliation bill, which could actually bypass some of the normal process and procedure and legislative hurdles that would normally have to happen in the Senate. Now, what do I mean by that? What is reconciliation? Well, it's actually kind of interesting. This whole thing is just a tax. So they've basically said, hey, you have to pay this tax, which is basically a bunch of hoops to jump through in order to get this suppressor. So if they use a reconciliation method or procedure, then they might be able to get past all the normal process and procedure, and basically they would just they'd have fewer votes. They'd only need a simple majority. So let's talk about what is reconciliation. You probably hear this a lot. If you haven't heard it a lot in the past, you're going to start hearing it a lot in the future. And this is important information, not just for the Hearing Protection Act, but going forward. So in the U.S. congressional process, reconciliation is actually a legislative procedure that's used to expedite the passage of certain budget-related bills. It was created under the Congressional Budget Act in 1974 to help Congress align spending and revenue with a budget resolution. So more concisely, the Reconciliation Act, it allows Congress to fast-track bills that affect the federal budget, such as taxes. And that's what this is. The Suppressor Act, the HPA, what they're trying to do is get rid of a tax. We talked about last week how this is you have to get a stamp, you have to pay a tax, and that's all this is. So you can fast track bills that affect the federal budget, such as taxes, spending, debt limit, and that'll help you bypass some of the procedural hurdles. So what GovTrack is saying is that if this thing tries to get the amount of votes it needs through a normal process and procedure, they don't think the votes are there. Okay, the 60 votes that would normally be needed, they don't think the votes are there. But in reconciliation, because this is a budget issue, the votes might actually be there. Reconciliation bills must directly impact federal revenue, spending, or the debt ceiling. If it's not related to the budget, then a senator can actually remove this. So if they say, hey, we're going to run this through the reconciliation and it's not really related to the budget, one senator can actually remove that. And that's actually called the Byrd Rule, B-Y-R-D, named after Senator Byrd, who was a racist Democrat out of the South. But he's long gone. He passed away a few years ago, as a matter of fact. He served for like 100 years. This guy was in the Senate for 1,000,000 years. It was ridiculous. I think, right after they signed the Constitution, Byrd got into office. But he was a racist senator out of the South. He was actually a KKK member and continued to be in the Senate up until just like, I think he just died like 10, 15 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. Okay, so if they, in the Senate, reconciliation bills require a simple majority, so 51 votes, and to pass, which would avoid the normal 60 votes and a filibuster. It makes it a really powerful tool for passing controversial things like the HPA. So the HPA, which seeks to remove suppressors from the NFA, the National Firearms Act, which is a tax-related law, it could potentially be included in a reconciliation bill because it involves changing tax provisions. It's a $200 tax stamp. A literal stamp is what you get for your $200. However, any non-fiscal provisions could be struck down by the Byrd Rule unless they're very, very carefully crafted. So they might, if they try to alter the definition of what a suppressor is or something like that. But that's what's going on. So if it most likely doesn't have the votes to make it through the Senate in the normal traditional way, in a full bill. But if they say, hey, you know what, this is actually a budget thing, it's a $200 tax that we're trying to get rid of or whatever, and that directly affects the budget, then they could send it through reconciliation, which means they'd only need 51 votes. And they damn well better have 51 votes in the Senate to pass this thing. I mean, they certainly make a lot of noise that they have at least 51 votes to protect our Second Amendment rights, but I guess this is going to be a big test. So here's what we need you to do. We need you to make some noise. We need you to call John Thune, Thune. He's actually the Senate Majority Leader. At his office in Washington, D.C., John Thune, 202-224-2321, and say, hey, it's real simple. Pass the Hearing Protection Act. Pass the Hearing Protection Act. Hi, my name is such and such. I'm calling Senator Thune to let him know I want him to pass the Hearing Protection Act. Call today, call tomorrow, call the next day, tell your friends to call. We want to flood their phones with requests to get this done. If anyone can get this done, It's the chair of of the Senate, Jonathan. And he, by the way, is generally pro Second Amendment. At least he makes a lot of noise that he is. So calling 202-224-2321. 202-224-2321. Look at that. It's up on the screen.
Look at that.
Call him, say, hey, I want the Hearing Protection Act passed. So there's some information on the Hearing Protection Act. It's not an up to the second update on exactly where it is, but what it is, it's a call to action. It's an education on exactly what's going on. And more importantly, now you have a little information in your back pocket about what exactly reconciliation is and means. And now that you've heard it, you're going to hear it 100 times over the next few years. So there you go. That's your legal and legislative update. Hey, thanks for watching Gun Owners Radio. I hope you loved that clip. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on social media. And check out our website at gunownersradio.com.